Manchester United have had a tumultuous last 12-13 months, and that's to do with not just the way things have panned out on the pitch but with regards to the ownership. Now, it was about 13 months back when the Glazer family, which owns 69% of the club, said that they or had rather expressed some interest in letting go of a certain part of their holdings, and that they started to look around for new owners. Just a part of it was up for sale, and that sort of set the cat among the pigeons, and Manchester United have really not been able to come to terms with the whole volatility that's happened at the club, especially during this summer when you saw Manchester United running helter-skelter to put this whole thing to bed. The board was under a lot of pressure, the Glazer family was getting a lot of flack, and now finally what had started about 13 months back, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe was one of those who had thrown his hat into the ring. The other, of course, was Sheikh Jassim, who wanted to buy the entire 100% of Manchester United, but the Glazer family said that they're not going to be selling the whole of the club. Now, what's happened after all these months is finally that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, one of the richest men in the UK, has finally been able to get a part of the ownership. What exactly is that chunk? We'll tell you about that, the details of the takeover, or this mini takeover of sorts, one can say, because it's just a minority stake that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has been able to get. He's one of the biggest Manchester United fans. He says he's a Manchester United fan from childhood, really wants to contribute to the club. What's the kind of money that it's taken for him to buy 25% of Manchester United? We're going to be giving you all those details over the next couple of minutes. Also, we're going to be talking about what exactly is it that Sir Jim Ratcliffe could now be bringing in as far as changes are concerned, because Manchester United in desperate need of making things work and turning things around at the moment. So how does Jim Ratcliffe now, with the roles that he's going to assume in that 25% stake that he's bought, what does that empower him to do, and what is it that should be on the top of his mind? We're going to be telling you that over the next few minutes. First things first, he's agreed to buy a 25% stake of Manchester United. Like I said, 69% is what the ownership was with the Glazer family, of which 25% he's now agreed to buy. We'll tell you about the shares as well that he's bought from the Glazer family. This deal roughly about nearly costing him about $1.3 billion. Turns out to be 1.03 billion pounds if you are to go by the conversion. That's the kind of money it's taken Sir Jim Ratcliffe to spend and get 25% of Manchester United. Remember, there was a time that the Glazers were looking at a much higher valuation, especially in the summer, and those valuations were not being met, which is why the process took too long for the Glazer family to find somebody who could buy at their particular valuation. And after all those months of negotiation, you finally now see $1.3 billion being the agreed sort of cost for the 25% stake that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has now got. He will provide additional 236 million pounds for revamping Old Trafford. Remember, it's that leaky ceiling of Old Trafford that seldom you see getting being talked about, and those memes and pictures do the rounds every time it rains in Manchester, and that leaky ceiling just tells you about the state of affairs at Manchester United and at the club and at the stadium in particular, because it does need a lot of revamp, and that's been pending for a while now. One of the biggest criticisms, in fact, that the Glazers have had to face from the Manchester United fans is not just how things have happened in the transfer market, but the fact that they've not pumped in enough money to be able to give the stadium a revamp. Yes, it's got a good capacity and there are some facilities which other clubs sort of envy, but with the kind of stadiums now coming up, you look at Barcelona, you look at Real Madrid have a new stadium, you look at West Ham a few years back shifted to the new stadium, Tottenham Hotspur in London. Again, clubs are going through a revamp, and Manchester United's Old Trafford also being one of the oldest stadiums in England definitely needs a revamp, because it's not undergone one for a while now. Let's move forward and tell you more about what this deal could be like, what this deal has been about. Now, so Jim Ratcliffe has agreed to buy 25% of the club's Class B shares. Remember, there are Class A shares as well, but he's got Class B shares, which are largely held by the Glazer family. Only Glazer family holds these shares. Sir Jim Ratcliffe now getting 25% of those. Now let's talk about his role now at Manchester United. What will Sir Jim Ratcliffe's role be in that minority stake that he has now? He will be taking on the sporting control at the club, which means that the Ineos group, which is which is the company that he owns, the Ineos group will oversee the men's and women's football operations and academies. That's the part that Sir Jim Ratcliffe now he now gets to control the sporting activities and the football operations. That's to say that in the transfer markets, even though he's got a minority stake, he will have some say as far as getting things in order are concerned in the transfer market. He'll be having those says as far as managerial positions are concerned. So a lot more footballing control he will get. Having said that, the the big control does continue to be with the Glazer family. It continues to be, it continues to exercise much more control because they've got a bigger chunk of the ownership. Let's talk about what Sir Jim Ratcliffe could be looking at, or what should be the priority for him as far as this role is concerned, because he's going to be looking into football operations at the club. First things first, he's got to make some cultural changes as well as some structural changes as well. When you talk about cultural change, you're looking at the way the club's been functioned. In terms of structure, you need to be looking at, and this is being said a lot about Manchester United, that they need a sporting director. They've got a football director and a technical director in Darren Fletcher right now, but there are experts out there who suggest that it is high time that Manchester United need not a football director but a sporting director, somebody who can work closely with the manager and report to the CEO. It has to be that bridge between the manager and the board or the CEO. Perhaps Manchester United need to appoint one such figure. The other change probably could be in the transfer policy, because Manchester United again haven't been the most prudent and wise when it comes to paying transfer fees, and they've been found guilty of spending, or rather overspending, on a few players, Anthony being the case in point. Even Højlund, now there are multiple reports doing the rounds that his valuation was much lesser, but given the way that Manchester United have done business over the last few summers, that's been up for criticism, and maybe a change in transfer policy, robust policy, is going to be one of the other things that Sir Jim Ratcliffe could look at. Also, sticking to decisions and not being stuck on the past is also one thing Manchester United will now have to do, because what's happened has happened, water under the bridge. But going forward, you need better planning, and perhaps let's say if you are to appoint a sporting director, if you are to back the manager, if you are to make these changes in the transfer policy, you need to stick to these decisions, because Manchester United often have been found guilty of not sticking to their own decisions and ruining things for themselves as a result. So all of these changes is what Manchester United could look for. It's a welcome change. If you ask me, as a Manchester United supporter, I do welcome the fact that there is finally somebody who is extremely passionate about the club. But the very fact, when it comes to power play, Sir Jim Ratcliffe will probably and possibly be outweighed by the Glazer family when it comes to crunch decisions, and that could be the case, and that's what happens when you have joint ownership at times. The two parties concerned may not always and necessarily be on the same page, so that could also be a hurdle. But the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe speaks highly of Manchester United, is a man on a mission, says that he wants to restore the pride and the stature and the glory days at Old Trafford, tells you that he is a man on mission, and he really wants to take the club to heights that it's not been able to hit over the last decade or so. It's in fact been a decade since Manchester United won the Premier League. The drought still continues, and it's been an early exit from the Champions League as well. So a lot going wrong, and must I also tell you that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is no mug when it comes to managing sporting entities. He's already he has a deal with a 5-year deal with Mercedes when it comes to Formula 1. He also has ownership in other leagues as well. He owns Club Nice, which plays in the French league, and he's also got a stake in the Swiss league as well, as far as Club Lucerne is concerned. So he's got interests elsewhere as well, and he knows what it takes to run these big entities. So hopefully, from all the experience that he has over at these places, hopefully that will translate into something good at Manchester United.